Henry, go on, get. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, Leo the Lefty. I'm Leo, your not very friendly elder millennial curmudgeon. And today I'm going to talk to you about the Green Children of Woolpit. This story is pretty old. It goes back to around 1150 in England, and it's sort of folklore, legend, myth, maybe. Did it happen? Did it not happen? We'll discuss it. Um, I'm going to be working on this little turtle that I drew just randomly. I think that she'll work for the amount of time it's going to take me to tell you the story, and we'll have a nice little picture when I'm finished, hopefully. We'll see. Anyway, I guess we'll get started. So all of this is going to be happening against the backdrop of the anarchy, which is a time in history between 1135 and 1154 when King Stephen was in power. He usurped the throne from his cousin, Empress Maud. I'm actually going to talk about that later, so we'll get into all the details of that because it is messy. But anyway, that is going on. So, there's a lot of fighting and battling and everything going on in this uh, time in history. Maybe not in the town specifically, but it lends to some of the theories later on that we'll get into. Um, and so our story takes place about 1150. All the sources that I've used have said either about 1150, around 1150, or on 1150. So 1150 is where we're going to go. And we're going to be in Suffolk County, England, and there's a little village called Woolpit. Um, in Old English, it was a wolf pit, and they actually had these pits dug in the ground to catch wolves in. If you know anything about England, you know that their wool industry is has been a part of their economy for centuries, and raising sheep and protecting those sheep from wolves was very important to protect the wool that they would sell and everything. That was their income. That's how they paid taxes and fed their family. So they had to protect these flocks from the wolves. And they don't really give, none of the sources give a specific time of year other than harvest time, so we're thinking fall. These people are out reaping the fields in Woolpit and bringing in the harvest, and by one of these wolf pits they see these two small children crawling out. There's no indication of their ages that I've seen, so I'm not sure how young they are. But they are strange because they are green. Their skin tone is green. And they do not speak English or Old English. They are said to speak an unknown language. It says their clothes are a strange color. This is 1150. I don't know what a strange color is in 1150. Is it orange or something? I don't know. It doesn't even describe or, say anywhere near what color the strange color was. So I digress. I don't know what the strange color was, but they were nervous and speaking gibberish according to contemporaries who talk about the event. And yes, but the strangest thing about them is that they were green. Their skin tone was a green color. Excuse me. So in 1150, and even now, this would seem rather strange. Um, I I know they didn't know what to make of it, and we'll get into theories later about why they could have possibly have been green, and you know where they came from and all of that. So they are taken to a man named Sir Richard de Calne, and he tries to offer them some food, and they refuse. They won't eat anything that they're offered until some days later, after their arrival. They're in his garden, and um, they see some green beans growing out of the ground, and they just jump on them. They devour them, and only wanted the green beans for a while. It doesn't say how long. Um, at some point, they are acclimated to, a more normal diet of what people are eating then and in that area at the time, and their skin tone changes to a normal color. So, you know, obviously, a lot of theories include vitamin deficiencies and, malnourishment, things like that, which makes sense. I'm definitely not a doctor, but that's the first thing I would think of is some sort of illness or something. And eventually, the children learn to speak English, and Sir Richard takes them to have them baptized. Now, shortly after this, the little boy dies. Sad, yeah. But the little girl, whom they begin to call Agnes, she learns to speak English, and she tells them that she is from a land called St. Martin, and it is always twilight there. The sun never really comes up. It's always as if the light is in between, you know, dusk and dawn. And they are a Christian nation, but St. Martin is heavily revered in her land. And her story, and I'll read to you, we can't say if this is an exact quote, but this is an exact quote from the Chronicles. Let me get to it in my notes here. On a certain day, when we were feeding our father's flock in the fields, we heard a great sound such as we are now accustomed to hear at St. Edmunds, Bury St. Edmunds, when the bells are chiming, and whilst listening to the sound in admiration, we became on a sudden entranced, and found ourselves among you in the fields you were reaping. So basically, they heard some bells, they went to a trance, and then when they came out of it, they were in this field where these people found them. And that's all she knew. And, well, later on, she will describe her land again. It is always twilight there, and then a certain luminous country is seen from a distance, divided by a very considerable river. So it sounds like they don't know what that country is. They can see it, but they can't get to it for whatever reason. I don't know. Nothing ever goes into all that, which sounds interesting, but, who knows. So that's kind of all the origins we get for Agnes and her brother. It doesn't ever say what the brother was called. I'm sure they called him something, but it doesn't ever say that I could find. And so she, kind of goes down in legend as one of the green children of Woolpit, but she kind of leads a pretty ordinary life after that. She, I guess, works for Sir Richard de Calne for a number of years before she marries a man named Richard Barr. And that's kind of the story. Now, I did see one source that said that she was known as a woman of loose morals. Whatever that means. There's all kinds of implications there, but really, did she just, not cast her eyes down well enough at some point when some man was talking to her, and they decided she was a loose woman after that? It didn't take much, so who knows. But it's hard to say because women are always described as either, you know, whores or Madonnas in these times, and you got to take it with a grain of salt. Let's do the bubbly looking things. Kind of turquoise color. Yeah, so anyhow, that is the basic legend, essentially, right there. And there's two sources that are around that time. There is, I want to make sure I'm saying their names correctly. William of Newburgh in the 13th century, and Ralph of Coggeshall in the 12th century. He died around 1227, so Ralph died in the 13th century, but he would have been around for some of the 12th century. But if this happened in 1150, he would have been quite young, so I don't think, you know, I obviously he was writing from some time separating himself in the event, but he is the nearest source of this tale to it in time that we know of. And these two accounts are kind of, they're about it, and they're the main two things that are cited when anybody else, any of my other sources, are talking about it. So they seem to be like the only ones that talk about it. It does seem like the little town of Woolpit has embraced their legend, which awesome, they should, and they celebrate it. So that's pretty cool. I love that for them. Kind of like how Roswell embraced the whole, you know, UFO crash thing. So go with it, you know, definitely. So we'll get into kind of the theories now, I guess. And they are, of course, we'll start with the kind of most absurd, which is aliens. I don't think these children were aliens. I don't. If this happened at all, if this is real, I don't think they were aliens. And I don't think they were probably that green. I think they probably had some sort of deficiency, vitamin deficiency or nutritional deficiency, that turned their skin a greenish shade. But were they green, like little green Martian men? I don't think so. I doubt it. And you know, it makes for a better story if they're like, you know, green. But I think it was more a greenish. And, you know, as far as the theories on their language and things like that, well, one of the theories is that they were the children of foreign immigrants. So, and some of those immigrants might have been Flemish, from Flanders. And this is where it's kind of important about the whole anarchy thing going on. In this battle with Stephen and Maud, they were constantly fighting for like 17, 18 years. They were going at it. I think Stephen, when he usurped the throne, expected Maud to just sort of accept it, and she did not. Hell yeah. So he was hiring tons of Flemish mercenaries to fight his battles for him, especially towards the end, because he dies in 1154. So in 1150, he's been fighting this war for years already, and he's tired, and a lot of the, you know, men he had fighting for him in England are tired or have switched sides, or they're dead because they fought for him or whatever, you know. And so he's been hiring a ton of Flemish mercenaries. So it makes sense that these kids could have been the children of a Flemish mercenary, or, you know, there was some immigration from Flanders to England with some of the people there. So I think that that makes the most sense. It wasn't so much that it was like a unknown language. It might have been unknown to the people there, but it was a foreign language. So, you know, and if these kids had been, you know, in a village or something where trauma had happened, you know, like a battle, or, you know, their village getting sacked or something, and, you know, they fled into the wilderness until they came upon Woolpit. Yes, Agnes says that they were feeding her father's flock, and then, you know, they just wound up there, which maybe that's what happened. I don't know. I wasn't there. Maybe they went through some portal or veil or something like that. But we'll, you know, I think we can assume that maybe it took her, you know, her brain might have imagined a different scenario because it was traumatic, or maybe she had some memories implanted over the years while she couldn't speak her language to tell them what happened. And by the time she learned, you know, the language they spoke, she remembered it differently or something. I don't know. It's possible that, you know, she did just wander in, and maybe they really did wander in, but it was, you know, from a little village nearer by than they thought, and who knows. But, you know, the alien thing, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And normally I'm not one to, like, knock a belief like that, but this just sounds like a couple of lost children, or possibly abandoned children. That's another theory, is that they were abandoned and even poisoned and left, and that's why they turned green. But I think they didn't. They were not doing well health-wise because they were malnourished, but they didn't seem ill from poison when they were found. You know, that was never mentioned, and I think it would have been. And I don't think that they would have lived as long as they did. It doesn't really say how long the little boy lived before he died. It makes it, some sources make it seem like it was a couple of years and that he learned to speak English too and then died. And some make it seem like he didn't live long enough to learn the language and died before that. So, I don't know. Again, 1150, I wasn't there. Couldn't tell you. Let's give her a blue eye, I guess. I don't know. Meh. It's kind of whatever. Oh, look at me. I stopped right here. Didn't keep going like a loser. Okay. So, some people think that the twilight that she experienced was just a very, like, she lived in a very leafy forest. But I think somebody would know the difference between a leafy forest and just the sky always being dark. And even in leafy forests, there are clearings occasionally where you can see the sky. So, you know, that doesn't track. And who knows about that? I really don't have any theories as to what the leafy, or what the twilight means in her origin story. Sorry, I get distracted when I'm trying to make sure I'm getting all the little lines, and I forget to talk. I'm not used to talking while I art. Something I'm gonna have to get used to, and hearing my own voice. I don't talk a lot, but I'll try to on here, enough to keep you entertained somewhat. Hope you're entertained. Oh, my pug is making pug noises. She'll entertain us. She's breathing heavily and snorting. Wonderful. Okay, so here's my favorite theory, just because I like it the most. I think it's fun. But they're from an underground world where the people are green. It's always twilight, you know, all of that magical, whimsical stuff. So I like that a lot. I think that's a cool theory. Um, do I think that's what actually happened? No. No, I think they were just the children of foreigners, immigrants, and either got lost or were abandoned for whatever reason. And so, you know, I don't necessarily believe the underground theory, but I like it the most. I think it's the most fun, of all the theories out there. I just like it. I don't know. I don't have to explain it. I just do. I just do. Now I'm trying to figure out what other colors I should use here. Maybe this seafoam green. I don't know if you can tell what that is. I'll have my supplies and sources down in the description. Let's see here. I'm looking through my notes to see if I missed anything. Looks like my battery is getting low, so I may have to come back to this. But we'll see if we can at least get her head done while I talk some more. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of all the theories as to who, what, why. I'm sure there's more out there, but those were the main ones that I saw. I didn't go on any forums or anything like that, because that is sometimes a bit much. And we just have to, I guess, believe what we want about it. I think it's a cool story. It's fun folklore. I'll talk a lot about other folklore stories from all over the world. I've got lots of plans for all kinds of stuff. Mythology, legends, mysteries, things like that. And this is kind of a mystery. It's a very plausible mystery that has a plausible explanation that isn't that fascinating, I guess. It's not that out there, okay? Maybe it's fascinating, but it's not that wild. Just being the lost children of some people that spoke a different language, and had a vitamin deficiency, which, it's 1150. Who didn't? They were all the rage back then. Everybody had one. If you didn't have one, you weren't cool. You needed some deficiencies, maybe some parasites. All that made you in hip. All of it. It was very, very much of the times. If you weren't dying of dysentery, what were you even doing? Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. And, the little boy, he probably died of tuberculosis or scarlet fever or typhoid or cholera or 1150. He stood in front of an open window for 30 seconds too long and caught a draft or something. It didn't take much to kill anybody off back then. They were simpler times, as in dying of practically anything was much simpler. And, maybe he was just too, depending on how long he lived after he arrived, maybe he was just already too sick when he arrived, that they couldn't bring him back from it, or maybe it weakened his constitution to where over time he just, would get sick, get a little better, get sick again, get a little better. That happened a lot. Henry the Seventh, his son Arthur, and Henry the Eighth, his son Edward, were both that on again, off again, sick until they died. So, people were just, sick back then. It was totally a thing, whether you were rich or poor. It was the great equalizer. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll jump into Stephen and Maud at another time, because that's going to be sort of its own series. I'm going to do Stephen and Maud, and then I will do Maud's son, Henry II, and his wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine. And that is a whole mess, let me tell you. They are some crazy people with all their intrigue and infighting and all that going on, and France is all in the mix, and they got too many damn kids, and everybody's fighting. It is some drama, and it's really interesting stuff, and it's sort of, gosh, it goes on for a long time, and just obviously leads into other future events in future generations that are just as crazy that I'll talk about, because you can't go through all of that without talking about Richard the Lionheart, and then King John, and the murder of, you know, his nephew Arthur, and just all of that interesting stuff. Alright, well, we're going to take a break right here. Okay, everybody, so I realized when I finished this case that the art piece wasn't finished, so I took a beat and decided that I'm going to throw in just a second case. Why not? It'll also be a short one, so hopefully it'll get me through most of the art piece. I'm going to do just a little talk about the dancing plagues of the medieval ages. So the most famous one happened in 1518, but as I dove into it a little bit, I realized that it's actually happened a couple of times. So let's get into it. Let me give this little gold collar here that I want to do. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to start off talking about the one in 1518. It was in Strasbourg, which is in modern day France, and it lasted from July to September, which is pretty crazy. Different reports varying. There was lots of records of this at the time, so I mean, I guess, you know, we know it happened, but some things over the years have been embellished and all of that, so we'll get into it. It's said that it started with a woman named Frau Trophy, or Trophea, Troffea. Now, Frau is German for Miss, so Miss Trophea, Trophy. She began dancing in the street, and I guess she was on her own doing this for a while, and she was just dancing in the street, and along the way, more and more people started to join her, and so that's kind of how this whole thing, you know, snowballed. Is it was just her for a while, but people started joining in, and it didn't seem like, you know, they were, oh, let's do this to have a good time. Like, the thing that makes this whole thing so weird is that it seemed like it was, you know, out of their control. They couldn't control themselves. It's hard to know, like, what kind of dancing they were doing at the time. If it was more like convulsions, or if it was more like actual dancing. You know, the reports just say the dancing plague, and, you know, our idea of dancing and their idea of dancing might be very different. Like, if they're having seizures out there, you know, they knew what seizures were back then, of course. So I don't believe it was that. And nobody's going to have a seizure for days and months and weeks on end or anything like that. So, and this did go on for a couple of months. It went from July to September, which is crazy. I mean, I don't understand how they kept it going. It did seem like they would kind of get to the point of exhaustion and rest and then get right back to it. So, I don't know. It's just very strange. Authorities in the town basically just like kind of turned it over to the doctors because they didn't know what to do or how to handle it. And the doctors essentially recommended just letting them dance it out. You know, let them get it out of their system, and once they've done that, they'll be fine, I guess. Now, okay, there's my pug hacking in the background. Sorry. Um, One of the things that's been conflated over the centuries is the amount of deaths. It says in a lot of uh, sources, which I'll cite in the description down below, that over 100 people died. But if you go back to, records of deaths and things like that of the time, there's no mention of it, so I don't think as many people died, especially of the dancing plague. Um, it doesn't seem like there was any unusual spike in the number of deaths attributed or anything like that. So I think that that's been seriously conflated over the years. And it says also that it was anywhere from 50 to 400 people. Uh, that's a pretty large gap to me. So I'm just because history always conflates things and makes numbers bigger than they are, I'm going to go with closer to probably 50, which would be enough to be quite, notable and to put in the records, but 400 seems, I don't know, it seems a bit much. But in some of the other stories, the numbers are quite high too, up to 100 people and things like that. So it's really hard to know the truth because everything gets so exaggerated, but it's some sort of weird phenomenon. And um, a lot of people thought it was a punishment from Saint Vitus. Now, I a lot of them say, well, Saint John the Baptist too, because I guess um, one of the incidents that happens much earlier on, a couple hundred years earlier, happens on the feast of Saint John the Baptist, and we'll get into that one here in a second. But the people in 1588 in Strasbourg thought that it was, if they didn't dance, they would be punished by Saint Vitus. So a lot of them, just joined in because they thought that they would be, punished by a saint if they didn't. And I guess danced to exhaustion and everything. So why they were compelled, believing this saint would essentially smite them if they didn't, I don't know. But that's the explanation given for some of the people joining in. It did seem like some other people were completely overtaken with the urge to join in and did so because they just couldn't stop themselves. But a bunch of other people, it seemed like they thought they had to, or, this saint was going to be mad at them and punish them in some way, which is, a way to live your life, I guess. But that's sort of the explanations given at the time about why this happened. Um, Let me have a look at my notes. So, doctors, kind of physicians, as rudimentary as they were at the time, once they don't really have an answer, it's kind of the church intervenes and they decide that all of these people need to go to the shrine of St. Vitus. Um, and they wore red shoes sprinkled with holy water and an ash cross on the top. They held a small cross and incense and spoke Latin incantations after being forgiven by Vitus. Then the plague ended. So I guess they went to the shrine and prayed and repented and all that good stuff, and they were forgiven. Lucky them. And the plague finally ends. So I guess hurrah for that. And that's kind of the end of the thing in Strasbourg. So a weird phenomenon, right? Well, let me turn my page here. Well, that was my Bluetooth speaker. She's turning herself off. Okay, Bluetooth, you do your thing. Ooh, I got a little rough with these lines. Okay, turn my page here. Alright, so, okay, this name, I'm gonna butcher it. In 11th century, Kurlbic, Saxony, uh, they had an outbreak on Christmas Eve of 1021. So, that's um, even before the conquest. So, that's a very long time ago. But they have an outbreak of the dancing plague on Christmas Eve. Which, I don't know, maybe it was just a little work party that got out of control. Does happen. But seems this was also, some people were just compelled to dance. And that was attributed to demonic possession. We don't know a whole lot about it, how many people were involved, if anybody died, anything like that. There's just not a whole lot of information on that one. Let's see here. June 24th, that's St. John the Baptist Day, or the Feast of St. John the Baptist. And in 1374, in Aachen, Germany, they called it the St. John's Dance. Another dancing plague breaks out, and this seems to spread among several different towns for a period of time. It's not said how long, all the way up to the Netherlands. And so I guess they had like essentially an outbreak, and it spread, and who knows if it was just the word was spreading and the power of suggestion. We'll get into theories at the end. But anyway, that's one incident. In 1247, Erfurt, Erfurt, Germany, um, another dancing plague outbreak happens. And this time there are like some amount of like 200 people dancing on a bridge, and the bridge collapses. Now, we don't get any exact numbers on how many deaths or injuries there were, but it was said that there were quite a few deaths and quite a few injuries from this bridge collapse of all these people dancing on it. So that's pretty messed up and sad. And then there was, it just says 15th century, that's the 1400s, Apulia, Italy, a woman bitten by a tarantula. The venom makes her dance convulsively, and then the cure was to shimmy to the right sort of music. That sounds like it was more of just a single woman, not a group of people. And that's, I don't know about that story. It was in some of the accounts, so I wrote it down and I'm telling it to you now, but weird, I know. And so all of these plague outbreaks seem to be happening all up and down the Rhine, which is a river. And they are spaced out through many years, some up to 100 years and everything, but this seems to be the area where these things happen, which is kind of weird. It's you know not all in the same place, but it's within the same general region, and up against the same river and everything. So that's just an interesting note right there. um, but really, it hasn't been, that I know of or that I saw in the research I did, it hasn't been much reported on since the last one that happened in 1518. I haven't seen anything on anything recently that seems similar to it. But I mainly do older mysteries anyway. So, I mean, if it did happen more recently, I would have thrown it in there, but I didn't see it in the research, so I just thought, it kind of seems to be a popular thing along this one general area for 300 or 400 years, and then it just isn't anymore, which is interesting, you know. I think a lot of that might have to do with, you know, back then people were religious, they were superstitious, they were, you know, they didn't have the vocabulary for a lot of, or the understanding for a lot of medical conditions they were seeing. So they attributed a lot of these things to spirits, demons, curses, all of that sort of thing. And we know now that a lot of the stuff that people thought were demons and ghosts and everything are just medical conditions. And, you know, that's how it goes. So let's get into theories. Um, a very popular one is food poisoning. There is a fungus called ergot, ERGOT, and it can grow in grains and things like that, and it can cause, you know, it has psychoactive, uh, you know, abilities when ingested, so it can cause like hallucination and things like that. But you know, that's just a theory thrown out there. That's why I'm presenting it, and I don't know. It's one of the more popular theories, but it doesn't explain, you know, people who seem fine and then just go up and start dancing. You know, I don't know about that. Um, there's the most popular theory is mass hysteria, that it's just one of those weird phenomenon that happen when, you know, a bunch of people get on board with something, start believing the same thing or seeing the same thing. Mass hysteria. But it seems strange that it could just take hold like that, but that's why it's called mass hysteria, you know. uh, and you know, I was thinking about it, thinking about my own theories and everything, and not that I necessarily believe them, but they're just theories I came up with. And one of them is, you know, a curse of some kind that practitioners of magic at the time would intermittently discover, play around with, things like that, you know, and happen across this, you know, goofy spell they want to try, or goofy curse, or, you know, some sort of motivation like that, like, oh, you know, I'm pissed, so I'm gonna do this to these people, and then it kind of gets out of control, and more people join in, because, you know, the one thing about spells is they can easily get away from you if you don't know what you're doing, and you got to be careful with all kinds of, you know, bad juju. You'll hear me talk about bad juju a lot. There's a lot of things. I very much am a believer in bad juju, and, you know, messing around with spells you don't understand before you're ready is bad juju. You don't do that. And so, you know, that's just another kind of theory I threw out there because, you know, why not? Why not? If it could be, you know, according to their times, demonic possession or something like that, then hell, why not a hex or a curse or something, you know? They love blaming witches, especially in 1518. That was, you know, before the Salem witch trials, before, you know, people kind of woke up to, oh, you know, we might be persecuting innocent people, and this is too easy to turn around and say everybody's a witch. But before that, people were real gung-ho to go on witch hunts, so, you know, I'm surprised. And maybe there are theories out there that it was a curse. Who knows? If anybody was accused of causing it and being a witch or whatever, I didn't see it in the sources, but it wouldn't surprise me if some poor old woman in a village got, you know, pinned for it just because they didn't have any other explanations. That happened a lot to old women in villages back then. Is it was really easy to call her the witch, and, you know, blame her for droughts or a death or, you know, any number of bad fortune. It was always her fault. Very misguided, but okay, and that brings me to my final theory. I think, you guys, and this is the one I wholeheartedly believe with my whole heart. I think it was my neighbor Alan. He's kind of weird, y'all. I don't know, man. Seems like something Alan would do. Alan does Alan shit all the time, and something like this, I definitely feel like Alan could do. He's he's ridiculous, y'all. If y'all only knew, okay? He does really bad jujitsu in his yard, and he makes very loud grunting noises, and he does it with no shirt on, and he's a he's a interesting fella, y'all. But this definitely has Alan written all over it. That guy, I wouldn't be surprised, man. He's capable of anything. I haven't talked about Alan yet, but as I was researching this case, I thought, you know what? I bet that guy did it. I bet he did it. And I'm thinking about calling the FBI. Gonna have to ask them, have you guys looked into Alan? He's up to some shit, man. I can tell. I can just tell. So, I'll update y'all. If y'all see on the news that, you know, the dancing plagues were solved and somebody turned in their neighbor, y'all will know it was me. Y'all will know. I mean, I'm not a narc or anything. I don't want to do it. But Alan can't keep getting away with this kind of stuff, you know? He just can't keep getting away with it. You know, making people act a fool and dance around and embarrassing themselves. I swear, y'all, he's a weird guy. He's a weird guy. He wears two hats sometimes. I don't understand it. And he eats boiled eggs on his front porch. Sometimes he caws at me like he's a crow or something. I don't know what to do. I just look at him and I'm like, what do you want, Alan? And then he'll just say, caw! And, you know, I get scared and I just run in my house. And then sometimes whenever I try to look out my blinds to see what Alan's doing, I see him looking out his blinds looking at me to see what I'm doing. So, I believe Alan is responsible. I believe he's doing this dancing plague thing. I also believe he's like 800 years old. He only looks like he's maybe like, you know, 32 or so. So he looks younger than me, but I'm pretty sure he's about 800 years old. I don't trust him. I don't trust Alan at all. And neither should you. If you see Alan out, you tell him. Tell him, get away from me, Alan. I don't trust you. He's a weird guy. A weird guy. And, you know, normally I'm fine with weird, but Alan, you know, it's a weird you don't trust. It's a weird you think could cause a dancing plague and, you know, doesn't scoop the dog poop out of his yard and probably doesn't return his shopping carts. I bet you anything he's never returned a shopping cart in his life. He just leaves them out there in the parking lot to run into other people's cars and for somebody else to clean up. Totally an Alan move. Okay. I think I've gone off enough about it. And I finished the art piece. What do y'all think of my little turtle? Alright. Well, hopefully y'all like this little episode of sort of impromptu. I meant it to be just about the green children of Woolpit, and then I realized I didn't finish my art, so y'all got the dancing plagues of the medieval times. And hope you enjoy. Stick around for my next case. I'm still trying to decide exactly what I'm going to do for my next big case. You'll know whenever you look at the thumbnail what I decided on, though, and I'll try to have that out by probably next Friday or Saturday. Not this coming Friday or Saturday, but next Friday or Saturday. So, you know, hopefully, if you made it through to the end of this, it means you enjoyed it. Come back again. Give me a subscribe if you feel like it. Likes, comments, everything is welcome. If you got any questions or anything, hit me up in the comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Alright, thanks everybody. Until next time, see you later.